So it's about 2 years ago, and I get the news that Holley has bought Hilborn, right? And I'm like, I get excited about this now because like mechanical fuel injection. I love mechanical fuel injection. And I'm like, well, they're only 100 miles up the road. This would be a great opportunity to play with some of this stuff. And I had all kinds of suggestions I wanted to throw at them too. So I call a contact at Holley, right? And he's like, oh yeah, it would be great. You know, we could work with you. This would be fun. We could do this. We could do that. We could do the other thing. And I told him this. I says, mechanical fuel injection is like a thing for me. And he says, well, it's not going to be mechanical. I says, what do you mean? He says, well, we're going all EFI with the Hilborn line. I'm like, and it starts to take the wind out of my sails, right? And I'm like, well, you know, all right, I get it. You're pushing the sniper stuff and everything else. He says, our whole line is going to be EFI within of just a few years. He says, you know, we're phasing out carburetors. Oh, no. Phasing out Holley? They're going to phase out carburetors? You know, at this point, I really don't want to talk to him anymore. I don't want to have anything to do with it anymore. I'm a little depressed, okay? And end the conversation. Actually, I haven't talked to him since. So, about that same time, I keep seeing things about Edelbrock releasing a 4150 Holley knockoff. I'm like, all right. And Holley actually does a video at around this time showing a prototype. And I'm like, oh, that's neat, you know, but it's prototype. It means nothing to me. Well, over the last few days, I've seen videos pop up. Evidently, Edelbrock is right there, ready to start distributing these things. They're in production, and they're sending out sample carburetors to certain people who've requested sample carburetors. I'm not part of the SEMA PRI crowd, so I'm like completely out of the loop. And if I want one of these carburetors, I'll go out and buy one of these carburetors. I may actually go out and buy one of these carburetors. Let's skip ahead here. So last night I watched a video, a really good video, on a channel called Muscle Car Solutions, and he was one of the people that got one of these production carburetors, early production carburetors, and he did a dissection of this thing. He did a great job. I could not have done a better job, so it's like I'm perfectly content to say this guy did he did a better video than I was going to do. So if you're curious about, you want to see what the actual guts of one of these things looks like, Muscle Car Solutions, excellent video. And there are some others out there too. But I says, okay, well, since these things are actually being handed out to people, they're ready to start selling them. So now's the time to talk about it. And also, like I said, companies will talk about like prototypes, and then what actually hits the market is something entirely different. Well, in this case, the prototype is pretty much exactly what they're putting out there, and it's beyond my expectations for sure. So let's talk about this Holley versus Edelbrock thing. So, to this point, the two companies, the two styles of carburetor have had two different markets really. The Edelbrock knockoff of the AFB and the AVS carburetors are Carters. And for me, on any type of driver car, something that I'm just going to take it out and just, you know, driver car, daily driver or occasional driver, muscle car type of car. For me, the Edelbrock or the Carter style is a no-brainer. I automatically go to them. I have like 4 or 5 cars that have Edelbrocks on them. Why? Because the Edelbrock, excuse me, all my pretty carburetors are currently like employed on engines. So I just have these relics that are sitting on the shelf, but they're good enough for explanations. So on a daily driver, why do I prefer the Edelbrock? Why do I always go with the Edelbrock? A couple of reasons. The first is that these things are reliable as anvils. I can let one of these carburetors sit for 2, 3, 4, 5 years. And I have cars that are like that just sit for years at a time, and then I'll get a bug and I'll work with them. And these things are exactly the same carburetor after they sit for 2, 3, 4, 5 years as they were when you shut the key off, okay? And the reason for that is there are no O-rings inside of there. On the Holleys, the needle and seat assembly has a couple of O-rings, and they will dry out. So when those carburetors sit for any amount of time, a couple of years, automatically you got to start going through and finding little bugs. And also, these carburetors have idle passages in the metering blocks that will clog. Edelbrocks also have idle passages that will clog, but they're not in the metering blocks. They're very easy to get to. They're in the boosters. So when maximum performance is not what I'm after, just good performance and drivability and gas mileage and flexibility, I go with the Edelbrocks. And then of course there's the tuning, right? Because you can literally change the jetting on an Edelbrock carburetor without spilling a drop of fuel. You can literally change the jetting on a calibration on an Edelbrock style carburetor, Carter style carburetor, in less time than it takes to take the air cleaner off. Because your drop rods are right under these two screws. So side of the road, you want to make a change. Let's say you're going to climb a mountain, you want to change it. Well, you boop, boop, and you change your drop rods and you put it back together again. It takes a minute. So as opposed to on a Holley where you got to pop the float ball off. So that's why these things have always been my go-to. But now, when you talk about ultimate performance, different story entirely. Because the Carter, Edelbrock, AFB, AVS style carburetor doesn't have the ability to flow like a Holley does. Now, you take a 600, these are both 600s. You take a 600 Holley and you take a 600 Edelbrock. And you say, oh, they flow 600 CFM, right? No, they don't. It's a theoretical computation that they make. I would need to learn ancient Hebrew and study the Kabbalah to find the exact methods and systems that they use to rate these things. They are not the same. And the reason is in their basic construction. Holleys come in two varieties. Mechanical secondary that has a second accelerator pump on the secondary side, or vacuum secondary, which gradually opens the secondary side of the carburetor. So with the throttle open, let's see, with the throttle open, you can see there's nothing there but a booster. Look in there, there's just a booster. Nice and happy, right? Okay. Carter Edelbrock style, you've got this air valve. So let's get this open. There we go. And you see it's got this flapper valve, this air valve, right? So this is the AFB version. The AVS version has an air door like a quadrajet over the secondaries. But the way these things are built, they're not designed for maximum flow. They're rated at 600 CFM, but a Edelbrock 600 CFM flows more like a 450 or 500 CFM Holley. The biggest of these Edelbrocks is 800 CFM. That flows about the same, has about the same characteristics as a 600 CFM Holley. So once you've got to that point where you actually need carburetor, you run out real fast with the AFB style or the Edelbrock style, and then you go to the Holley. And the go-to Holley for performance, once you get over that 650 so CFM, is the 4150 style, which is a design that goes right back to the 1950s. It's like the original Holley design. These things are everywhere. They're universal. They work. And these start at, well, I think they start at 650 CFM. There might be a smaller 4150, I'm not aware. They start at 650, 750, 850, 950. The 950 is not really a 950, and we'll talk about that in a minute. So these carburetors are universal. This is the universal go-to carburetor. Now, Edelbrock, to this point, has been stuck with that street rod muscle car driver type of carburetor. Now with this 4150, their version of the 4150, it is so superior to the Holley product in every way. It's like the Holley, now don't get me wrong, there's been lots of evolution on the Holley for the last almost 70 years, okay? Lots of evolution and lots of knockoffs. Different companies, there's one of them, FPS, I believe it is, I don't even know. They do some really nice aftermarket Holley carburetors, refinements of the original design. But Edelbrock, with this with their version of the 4150, completely reinvented this thing, but maintained all of its qualities and characteristics. They were going to be available in the same lineup as the Holleys, 650, 750, 850, and a 950, which is actually a true 950, as opposed to the Holley 950, which is actually an 830, which is smaller than the 850. Again, it's Kabbalah stuff, right? So let's talk about the Edelbrock 4150. Since I don't have one here, we'll have to just go off of what I do have. All right. So they're only available in a race version, meaning that there's no choke tower. And that's good because their street version is filled by the older style, the Edelbrock Carter AFB AVS. So there was really no need for a street version of this new 4150. So right off the bat, they all come with no choke tower and a beautifully contoured air horn. The boosters are up higher. The thickness here is an extra half of an inch. So it has an advantageous profile to the boosters, and the boosters are up higher. It uses an annular booster. I think they're interchangeable. Like, in other words, like they have all different boosters that you can stick into the body, whereas on a Holley, it's a major operation to change a booster. These things are going to be snap one in, snap one out, whatever your application happens to need. Instead of having a two-piece body like these do, so you got the main body and then you got the base plate. On this new Edelbrock, it's one piece. And that's good because I think they did that because these main bodies here are prone to warpage where they meet the metering blocks. And by making it one piece, one billet chunk, you're strengthening this whole area over here, so there's less chance of these things deforming over time. Another interesting thing that they did was the Holleys all use a 1/4-20 stud for the air cleaner. They went to a 5/16. And you say, why did they do that? Well, because if you're going to do an ultimate carburetor in today's world, you have to take into consideration blow-through applications, lots of boost, carb hat, right? Well, with the 5/16, you can actually secure the carb hat down. With the 1/4-20, it's sketchy at best. And you can drill and tap, but there isn't a whole lot of metal around it. So I thought that was interesting. Air bleeds, right? How many air bleeds do you want? The new Edelbrock is so ridiculously adjustable. Okay, this carburetor was designed by somebody who spends a lot of time fine-tuning stuff on the dyno. It has far more adjustability in the air bleeds and in the metering block than any normal hot rodder or drag racer is going to ever need. Like I said, it was like a dyno nerd was like dialed in on, and incorporated into the design of this carburetor. Over adjustability. I guess it's a good thing, right? But in the air bleeds, it's got circuits up the wazoo, and they all have easily removable, changeable jets. Where with the Holley, you have to go. Okay. The real differences, and you see where they were thinking, like this is real forward thinking. The real differences are in the float bowls. All right. So the float bowl, the bowl itself is 20% larger, right? So it has 20% more capacity. They added a drain fitting plug, so that you want to pop the bowl off. You don't have to make a mess. Although it was never really necessary. You just pop out one of the bottom screws and they drain out anyway. But that's besides the point. It's a nice touch. They added a drain plug over there. 20% more capacity. And then, right? So, all right. So, a lot of people go to the EFI because of the demands. So forget about drag racing. Forget about muscle cars. Forget about drag racing. A lot of people go to EFI because of the type of thing that they do. Off-roaders, rock crawlers, autocross guys, circle track people, they'll go to road race. They'll go to a EFI system because fuel slosh is an issue. Well, they really went nuts inside the bowl with this. There's a shelf, right? An anti-slosh shelf. The bowl, the float itself is contoured everything is designed so that during hard cornering or things start to get crazy like that, it won't affect the height of the float. During hard cornering or that type of maneuvering, all of the fuel will want to go to one side and it'll push the float up even though it's not full of fuel. So it'll push the float up, shut off fuel flow, and it'll starve the motor real fast. So by contouring the float with those chamfers on either side, it can go like this and the bowl maintains, or the float maintains, its correct height. They also added jet extensions, which is something that you would do on an aftermarket. It's for the modification you would make on a regular 4150 on the secondaries, because as you accelerate, the fuel wants to run away from the jets. So you'd add extension tubes to, on the 4150, they're already built into it. And the float itself is contoured to clear those jet extensions. Like, they really thought of everything with this. What else? What other major features with it? It's got a TPS. A lot of guys use an electronically controlled transmission, and they'll use that GM-style TPS. Well, the Edelbrock has a TPS mount. It takes the regular standard GM, that 3-pin TPS. It's already there on the carburetor, so you don't have to. Well, the TPS itself isn't on the carburetor, but the provision for it is there. I wonder what they've got on theirs. So, what else is there? 4-corner idling. Just overall, it's like every shortcoming, and I know I'm going to think of other stuff after I'm going to shoot this video. I'm going to put it out, and I'm going to think, oh wait, there's like 10 other things. We're going to do more on this carburetor. I'm probably going to buy one when they become available. I think I'm going to get a 950, but let's wait until they're out there. And they're not priced too bad. I believe they're around in the $800, $700 to $800 range. So they're not cheap, but they're not extremely expensive either. Oh, one other thing. Yeah, see? Okay. A lot of times you get into a bigger cam, right? You get into a low vacuum situation. And in order to get the motor to idle correctly, you've got to open the throttle a bit, right? You open the throttle stop a little bit, and it'll idle where the blades are up in the transfer slot. Now you get this fat, disgusting idle. So one of the things that you have to do to correct that is drill holes in the throttle blades, in the primary throttle blades, so it'll let a little extra air in. Edelbrock, with this new 4150, they added air bleeds, external air bleeds, so that just for idle air. So this way you don't have to bother, if you've got a really low vacuum situation and the thing is just and it's fatter, all you have to do now is just adjust the idle air, which is something that goes back to the original AFB style carburetors, because they had a similar setup where you didn't make your idle adjustments off of the throttle over here. You did it off of an air bleed that was at the front. So that's Edelbrock, who did Carter, taking one of Carter's old ideas and putting in this futuristic 41. It's exciting stuff. Carburetors are not dead. This new line of carburetors. Oh, see, one other thing. I keep forgetting about this stuff. The base plate has an odd-shaped pattern here, right? Instead of just having a round circle, it's got like I can't even describe it, but it's an oblong deal, and that's so that this will bolt on both the standard 4150 style manifold and a Dominator style manifold. And I guarantee they've got it. Once these things are in the loop, they'll have a Dominator style on the market too. Interesting stuff. The carburetor is not dead, and this new Edelbrock 4150 is a game changer. Right? I can't wait to see them in action. I can't wait to see if and what Holley does to counter it. But as far as I'm concerned now, no matter what you need, if you've got like a 283 Chevy that's going to be just in your cruiser, your Sunday afternoon car, right? Carter's got you. I should say Edelbrock has got you with the Carter style carburetor. Your drag racing, your off-road racing, your autocrossing, you've got a full race thing. Now they've got you covered with this series. So Edelbrock is becoming one-stop carburetor shopping. And I don't get paid for them, and I don't want their products for free or anything like that. When something is good, it's good. I think that this is really good. And that's it. I hope you got something out of that. I'll see you tomorrow.